What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. As gardeners, we know that a good productive garden, that comes from healthy soil. How do you build healthy soil though? And can you take bad soil and change that into good soil? That's what we'll be talking about today. Let's go. Before I get into the specifics of how to build healthy soil and whether or not you can take bad soil and bring that to good soil, I want to establish a little credibility for what I'm saying. Before I instruct you on how I think you should do it, I want to show you that the methods that I'm telling you or will tell you that they've worked and they're working. I'm in my food forest now. We've been using these methods that I'm going to let you know how to build soil. I've been using for 5 years at least. This food forest is 7 years old, but I've really taken those methods on and adopted them the last 5 years, and it's taken this place from sandy soil, which I'll show you, to abundance. Look at the color of the foliage of the trees and the plants. You can see they're healthy, they're vibrant, they're loving life. And again, the soil that I started with wasn't really much. It was just sandy soil. I live right by the ocean. By seeing the plants and trees in here and how lush and green they are, you could assume that the soil in here is good and healthy. That's not how I started though. Like I said, I started with sandy soil. And you're gonna probably start with one or two soils, either sandy soil or clay soil. A lot of times that's kind of where it is. Both of them have the good things and the bad things about them. Let's talk about them. I'll show you my sandy soil, talk a little bit about that and how I remedy it. To show you my native sandy soil, I don't have to take you far. So we'll just step right outside the food forest, go about 5 or 6 feet. We'll start to get some grass over here. And here's where the native soil's at. I live close to the ocean, so I'm basically all sand. That's what you got here. This is pure sand. You can see it's a little dark because it rained this morning, but this is pure sand. I can't dig down into it because it's just too compacted. What this looks like though, this sand, it's nothing like what my soil looks like now. I'll show you guys that in a little bit. But how do we turn this into beautiful soil? If you have sandy soil like me, then you know that it drains well, which can be a good thing and also kind of a bad thing. We don't want the soil pooling up and cutting off oxygen to the roots, but we also don't want the soil draining so quickly that the roots don't have the ability to suck some of that up. Another thing about sandy soil is the lack of adequate nutrition for a lot of our plants, sometimes things like brassicas and stuff, plants that are heavy feeders. Sometimes they just don't have the nutrition that we actually need. I know sand has a lot of minerals, but I'm talking some of the other nutrition. On the other hand, if you have clay soil, your issue might be the complete opposite. Your problem might be with drainage. You may have pooling water, which can be a big issue. Like I said, if you have plants and their roots are sitting in this water, they've got no access to oxygen. And those roots need oxygen to actually breathe and survive and thrive. So is there something we could do that will remedy both for sandy and clay soil? Or is it actually something that we don't even have to do? You're probably thinking, James, how is that we can build healthy soil and not be the ones to do it? So over the years of gardening, I've found that it seems like the more I remove myself from the situation, the better off things are. The more I allow nature and the system to take care of itself and set up the right scenario and circumstances for the system to help support itself, the better off things are. And that's where it comes to soil building too. I don't believe that soil is built best when you want to come out and mix all things together and create what I call a soil stomachache. That's just not the way to do it in my opinion. And the reason I don't think that's the way to do it is because when I look out at nature, I see the healthiest soils in things like forests. I look at those forests and that forest isn't tilling. It's natural, just breaking down of organic matter in layers. And I guess you could say there is some tilling in the forest, but the things that are doing the tilling are the worms. The worms, the master tillers, also some little animals and bacteria life that's also working, microorganisms, and especially that mycorrhizal fungi. How do we set up the perfect scenario though to build healthy soil and allow these microorganisms and the soil life to feed the plants? Because that's what we're doing. We want to be feeding the soil life, which in turn, that soil life feeds the plants. We're not using the decayed organic matter to actually directly feed the plants. That's why something like having an issue with whether or not it's a little acidic, that's okay. You don't have to worry about that. As long as you layer it and put things down just like nature does. In a season, the end of the fall in a deciduous tree, after all the leaves drop, they drop to the ground, they feed all the microorganisms, and that in turn helps build a healthier soil. This doesn't just give the plants nutrition. What this also does is provide soil structure, which is so foundational for healthy plants. Soil structure, that's the key. That's one of the most important things to take away from this video. That's what's actually gonna take your sandy soil and make it so you can hold moisture. And that's what's gonna take your clay soil and make it so you can actually have better drainage. How does this work? How does this happen? So the decayed organic matter, and especially something like the mycos, what they do is they form soil aggregates. A soil aggregate is essentially a particle of, a clump of different kinds of soil all together. It holds its shape. So when you have all these clumps that come next to each other, instead of all connecting almost like a jigsaw and fitting tightly together, there's gaps between them. These gaps are what we call pore spacing. And this pore spacing is so important because, like I mentioned, roots need oxygen. Having this pore space provides oxygen where the roots can go in and they can, take up some of that oxygen and things they need. When I said mycos, I meant the mycorrhizal association. That's going to be one of your best friends when building soil aggregates and better soil structure. The reason for this is that mycorrhizal fungi, it takes that decayed organic matter, it breaks it down. We call this mycorrhizal fungi the teeth of the forest, and actually forms this waxy surface on the outside of your soil. And this is what helps the soil hold into soil aggregates. So this mycorrhizal fungi, you can see this life in the soil. This is what's going to build your aggregates. This is what my soil looks like now. From putting the right system in, decayed organic matter, thick wood chips, any organic matter actually. And this is the soil that you could have. The roots are already growing up deep into this, but man, can I go deep. And look at the color of it. Look at the amount of organic matter. Now I'm starting to get down to some of the sand, but you can see how much soil we've built in a short period of time. Here's the sand below. That's not holding much water, but this stuff here, loaded with organic matter. A little stat for you, by adding a 5% increase to your soil, a 5% increase of organic matter, which could be as simple as like an inch of soil over the whole garden, that can increase your ability to hold water by 20%. That organic matter mulch, that's what's gonna start the process. That's what's gonna bring all the life in. The amount of life in my soil is incredible. And I love that because when I take a living plant, something like a tomato now, all I do is I take that living tomato plant and I plug the living plant into living soil. You get that connection, which I think is vital and important. In my new food forest, where it's all sandy and the soil is slowly being built, I'm not getting as much of that living connection, and I can see it in the health of the plants. A lot of the plants in here are doing better, but that should be encouraging for you because you can take your sandy soil or your clay soil or whatever crappy kind of soil you have and change that into healthier, into better soil that produces good fruit for you. So whether or not you want to take your clay soil or your sandy soil to the next level, the mycorrhizal fungi is going to be a huge help for that. Paul Stamets, who's the master mycologist, says that about 70% of soil microbes are actually fungus. And some of this fungus are the mycorrhizal fungi, which is my favorite kind. The reason is because it forms an actual association and a symbiotic relationship with the plants. 95% of plants form this association. There are some that don't, but trees do, and most of them do. And in this association, we've actually have plants like these, like the raspberries or any trees. They're photosynthesizing, so they're taking that sun energy and having it in storage of sugars. They're giving these sugars actually to the mycorrhizal fungi, and in trade, the mycorrhizal fungi are providing the plants with water or minerals or any kind of nutrition it needs. This fungus is always living in this soil when you have a thick organic matter mulch. I already showed you one location where we had some nice soil, but I want to bring you into another location to show you we're building soil everywhere. And you can see how we're doing it with this thick wood organic matter mulch. Wood chips are great, especially when you can get the ones with needles and the leaves, because the leaves and everything are what are going to be feeding your worms and everything immediately. As you can see, the deeper I get, I'm starting to get to more of a soil with a better structure. Good soil structure actually has crumble. So it holds together, but it also crumbles nicely, just like this. Loaded with worms, because these worms, like I said, these are kind of your little tillers. These worms are like our little tillers, out there constantly working, mixing up the ground, taking that organic matter, converting it into worm castings, which is beautiful and high in nutrition. But using the organic matter and the wood chips, that's how you build soil from the top down. We want to also be building soil from the bottom up. A good way to do that is with plants. perennials or even things like carrots, things with deep taproots, radishes. What I like to do is if I'm in a section that is hard pan, or even if you're in a clay section, you could plant something like carrots, something with strong taproots. You want to plant those, they'll shoot into the ground as deep as they basically can. If it's hard pan, they'll only go so deep, but as deep as they can, they'll grow. You don't want to harvest those, you want to leave those in the ground and let the worms do the work. What will happen is the section that the carrot basically is, if you do a carrot, that'll all kind of hollow out as it rots on the inside. The worms will come through, eat a lot of that organic rotted matter, and use that hole as kind of like an elevator to get up different soil levels. And that's also going to be breaking up some of your soil and increasing the overall aggregate. So let's build soil not only from the top down, but from the bottom up. If you can find plants that fix nitrogen, that'll also help break up some of your clay or your hard pan soil, that'd be a great help too, because when you cut that back, that'll also help feed the soil. So you're getting kind of that two things for only doing one. That's kind of where permaculture mindset comes in, that multifunctionality. That's kind of what we want to be focusing on. And there's also a plant, I think it's called sweet clover. It's got long roots. Plant that one in your clay. And after like 2 years or so, just let it grow. That could really help to break up some of your hard pan. And even if you find other plants with strong roots, those will help break it up. And you want to either cut them back to let the roots die, but you don't want to make sure that you're not pulling out the roots. You want those roots to stay in there. Because like I said, the worms and all the soil life, the microorganisms, they're going to go in and eat up a lot of that decayed organic matter in there, or that organic matter in the form of roots. The only way they have that is through the roots. A lot of those won't travel all the way up to get the decayed organic matter and bring it back down. So you want to make sure you're providing some food and actually for all the life that's below your soil. Let's talk about what I want you all to take away from this. The first thing is there's two ways to build soil basically, from the top down and the bottom up. We want to make sure we take advantage of both of them. The second one is we're not really the ones building the soil. We're the ones providing the perfect circumstances and scenario for soil to be built. The second one is we want to make sure we're completely natural and completely organic as much as we can, because we don't want to disturb the soil life, the microorganisms and all those kinds of things, and disrupt them from doing what they naturally are best at doing. Also, we don't want to till the soil because that can have the same circumstances. So important is that we don't want to mix any of our organic matter into the soil. We just want to put it down as layers. We take a look at nature and the natural forest and we learn from them. It's been doing it correct for as long as it's been doing it, and I don't really want to have to try to change that. What I do is add even more organic matter, add wood chips, and add all that life to increase the progression. I'm not trying to change what happens in nature, I'm just trying to speed it up a little bit to increase my soil structure and my fertility in this beautiful forest so I can grow the world's most amazing, most natural food. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. One thing I wanted to mention is that building soil like this, healthy soil the natural way, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to take a little bit of time. But in my opinion, that's not really an issue, because I found that most things in life that are truly worth it do take some time. And the other thing about this system is every year your soil is going to get better. It's going to get more fertile, and actually you're going to have to put less work in for bigger harvests. If you go on the other side, the contrary to that chemical way, you get the complete opposite. Every year you need to put more in. Every year you're salting your soil and it gets worse and worse and you're killing off more life. So in my opinion, I'm about bringing life in. And I want my soil to be perfect and grow the biggest, healthiest plants. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this one with your friends, and don't forget to check us out on Steam It. One thing that's important though is keep putting those comments down there, because those comments, I read all of them and they have a huge help. They give me ideas, they encourage me, they instruct me, and I read every single one. See you guys in the next one. James Prigioni, peace out.